Hi, guys. Can anybody hear me?
Hey Todd, I can't hear them either. Maybe they're still trying to set up.
Can you hear me, Sarah?
Yep, I could hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Hopefully they'll get their act together. I hope they saw
Hmm.
my text message. Okay. You got to just stand by. How's everything going?
Good. How are you?
Good. The
Are
summer
you?
over, and I guess we'll be
Oh,
into all of our meetings.
yep. Get busy again. Yeah, school starts tomorrow, and yeah, school starts tomorrow.
Yeah. The business at my conference center is clicking into full gear, so I got to be around more. Less time out in Pennsylvania, more time in the city.
Gotcha. So you're both in. Hey, Libby, we're trying to hear from the office when they set up. She's on the phone too. Oh, so you go Pennsylvania and New York. Yeah.
Right. My wife and I have a house in Pennsylvania, so we spend as much time as we can there during the summer. And
Lucky you. Yeah.
of course, my conference center requires my presence. And if you could believe it, I'm under strict doctor's orders to try to stay away from heavily crowded conference rooms.
Mm. No, I know. It's like something's gonna go around in the winter again.
So uh, when my physical presence is really needed, then I'll go. But I gotta get some more masks. I gotta get my COVID shot and
Mm.
for the rest of the year.
Yeah, that's true. The shot. Oh, that reminds me, I have to get my flu shot. Yeah.
Oh, yes, the flu shot. And it was 1 year I didn't get the flu shot, and I lived to regret it. So I'm usually very fastidious about that.
I think they just wrote they're having technical difficulties. We will begin in just a moment. Okay,
Okay.
it's good. Libby's on mute. So I'm gonna go off on mute for a minute. Just get my spotter.
Okay.
Good. Good. Right. Miles, can you confirm that you have a forum? Great. Okay. Good evening, everyone. This is the State Licenses and Permits Committee of Community Board 5. I'm Janice Young, your new chair, and I'm joined by Miles Kerwin, your new vice chair. First, I'd like to have us go around the room to introduce ourselves.
I'm gonna have to introduce myself in a second, which is gonna be, nope.
You're not muted, Libby.
Hi, sorry, I'm Libby. Just to get this out of the way, I can go first. Sorry. I'm Libby. I'm currently dealing with a different applicant and closing it. So yes, hi, bye.
Thanks, Libby. Okay, in the room, who would like to go? Miles?
Miles Kerwin, I'm the vice chair.
Hi, everyone. San Zoo.
Yoden Fondon.
Everyone, Seth Borden. Yaron Nodi Victor.
Catherine Ellington.
David Shapiro.
And before I begin with the agenda, I want to thank my predecessor as chair, David
Is
Sigmund.
Sang here and Todd on screen?
Sorry. Yes, BJ, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, VJ.
Sang Slap Committee and also on Parks.
Yes. Todd Shapiro, longtime slot member and vice chair of Community Board 5.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone else I'm forgetting? Okay, great. Sorry about that. So before I begin with the agenda, I want to thank my predecessor as chair, David Sigmund, who has left our committee to chair our Transportation and Environment Committee after 3 years of dutiful service to SLAP. I will strive to run our meetings with David's levity and his predecessor, Nick Afanale's efficiency. Second, I want to welcome back everyone after what was hopefully a relaxing summer break, although many of us were still busy at work on applications because the liquor, cannabis, and dining out don't stop. And for this, I thank everyone for your continued hard work. And last but not least, I want to welcome the 2 new members to our committee, Yoden Fondon and David Shapiro. Because this is their first slot meeting, I'm going to try to explain things as thoroughly but efficiently as possible as we move through tonight's agenda. Welcome, Christopher. Okay, so we have 3 items on the agenda tonight. Since the posting of the agenda last week, we received 2 executed affidavits, one for 14 East 25th Street, doing business as vested, and the other for 201 Park Ave South, doing business as W New York Union Square Hotel. And what this means is that the applicant and the community were able to come to an agreement about the applicant's method of operation. So we no longer need to hear these applications further. The remaining application has a finalized affidavit. So an agreement has also been reached between the applicant and the community. But just because we weren't able to get that executed in time for this meeting, we will be hearing it tonight just so we can close things out. So what we have on the agenda are 36 Central Park South for Symphony CP Park Lane Owner LLC and Highgate Hotels LP, doing business as the Park Lane Hotel. We have an update on our dining out application review process, and we have an update from the Cannabis Task Force. Is there anyone attending that has any other business for the committee other than the items on the agenda? If so, please raise your hand in person or virtually using the raise hand button. Seeing none, new business is closed. We'll now move on to our agenda items. So when I call the application, I'll ask the applicant to introduce themselves. I'll then turn the meeting over to a committee member who will present the application and give a summary of the specifics of the method of operation. After that, I'll give the applicant an opportunity to speak. At any time during that process, members of the committee can ask questions and make comments by raising their hand and waiting to be recognized. After that, I'll give the public the opportunity to comment, again by using the raise hand button. Once they are recognized, we will ask them to turn on their camera, unmute themselves, state who they are and the relevance to the application, and give their comments. After that, I'll put the committee into business session, during which only the committee will discuss the application. At that point, no further input from the applicant or the public is appropriate unless requested by the chair. During the business session, the committee will discuss the application, there will be a motion, and the committee will take a vote. The vote of this committee will be our recommendation to the full board of CB5, which will meet next Thursday, September 12th. Please check our website for more information. And the vote of the full board will be CB5's position on the application. So with that, we'll move to our first item. And to all members of the public, during the comment period, please keep your comments effective and to the point. So 201 Park Ave South and, oh, sorry. That is not on the agenda. 36 Central Park South, Symphony CP Park Lane owner LLC and Highgate Hotels LP doing business as Park Lane Hotel. Can I have the applicant please introduce themselves?
I'm sorry, you're doing 36 Central Park South, Janice?
Yes.
Hi, everybody. Donald Bernstein. I'm the attorney for the applicant.
Great, thank you. And you're here alone tonight?
I am here alone tonight because we were trying to get
Yes.
this done, but could not make the deadline. So
Yes.
have me.
Great. Well, happy to have you. Thank you for
Thank
all
you.
your effort leading up to this point, and hopefully we can bring this to a close. Donna, do you want to?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks to Donald again for all your help here. So this application is for a hotel, the Park Lane at Central Park South between 5th and 6th Avenues in Midtown. And the hotel's been like operating for a number of years, but like in the last couple of years, they have this like ground floor alleyway space that they opened up into a restaurant called the Rose Lane. So they are seeking a liquor license application, and through the process, it kind of became clear that the residents of the area had like a number of concerns with the Rose Lane restaurant hours and the ground floor and kind of like outdoor space. In terms of like the application itself, it's seeking like a license for a number of parts of the hotels. You have like indoor banquet halls, a rooftop space. But in terms of like the areas of concern, those were like primarily focused on this like Rose Lane area. So some topics that came up by neighbors are just like the noise issues. There's like outdoor speakers. It's right next to a big residential building, really affecting people who are trying to go to sleep at night. Even people working during the day who have to like contend with live music blasting. And just that was like kind of the primary question here. I think like through a lot of discussion with the applicant, who was very accommodating, we've come to like a general set of stipulations, which is pending execution at this point. To touch on some of like the high points here, from an hours perspective, I believe we're just seeking licensing of all like the indoor spaces, like the banquet halls through 4 a.m. 7 days a week. For the outdoor cafe space and this like outdoor terrace space, seeking operation no later than midnight 7 days a week. In terms of the rooftop at the very top of the building, that kind of complies with most of our outdoor guidelines. So we are seeking close no later than 1 a.m. On weekends, 1 a.m. weekdays, 2 a.m. weekends. And then in terms of like the mitigations to these concerns, some of the main ones that the applicant has pretty much all agreed to is just like for the Rose Lane space to not play music after 10 p.m. And also just to have certain modifications, the type of live music that's performed. So no like electronic music, for example, and then also to have this live music be played only between the hours of 4 and 10 p.m. The applicant also commissioned a sound study with Kustalog, and we're kind of asking them to just enforce typical rules around decibel levels, explore installing volume limiters, and then also additionally explore additional sound mitigation strategies. So one point in particular is relocating speakers that they kind of have with the common wall of the adjacent residential building off, and hopefully that'll get rid of some of the noise issues and the reverb going up to the adjacent building. Applicant is also going to make sure their sanitation plan is like appropriate, complies with all city guidelines, and provide a hotline to the residents on duty. I think we might have some residents on today, and I'll let them like comment a little bit, but these are kind of like the steps that came out of our community meeting, and folks are generally aligned. There are still some additional questions raised by some folks here. I'll just like kind of like two. One is that like, you know, the rooftop hours are still going pretty late. We're not really restricting live music on the rooftop. And again, like that, the rooftop at the very, very top of the building, you know, kind of complies with our rooftop regs in the sense that it's like really elevated. And then also just like kind of wanting to make sure that speaker removals will happen and we can kind of have like a real contact in case anything goes awry. So I'll pause there.
Great, thanks, Zona. Are there any questions or comments from the committee before we go to the applicant?
All right, just how tall is it? Like, where is the rooftop exactly?
I do not have the actual number, but it's like really, it's like it's a very top.
And far above what the
Yeah,
residential
so I
is.
think our rooftop guidelines is like above 10 stories,
10
and
stories.
it's definitely like it's
Clears the,
above 10.
yeah, okay, cool.
Questions, did you get the sense that like any of the like issues people were having were related to the rooftop music, or is it like elsewhere?
Yeah, I think the rooftop wasn't an issue of concern. It was mostly just around the Rose Lane space, because that is, you know, like right next to, especially a lot of the residents who are living like on the lower floors. And you know, the noise complaints have really been focused on the ground floor areas.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Okay, Donald, would you like to make any comments or?
Yes,
address-
thanks, Janice, and thanks, Owen. I appreciate all the work you put into this. I know we've all tried very hard to come to an agreement, and we have come to an agreement. As you stated, the parkland has been licensed for many years, and the application that we presented did not present any change. The roof was always operated this way. It was always operated with the late hours. They always had a DJ. They had music in the Rose Lane. There's no change. To the public, nothing is changing. Ownership is changing, but to the public, nothing's changing regarding this hotel. And you asked about the height. It's 43 stories, so the rooftop is pretty high up. If you go there, it's actually quite beautiful. So you know, we had a call with residents. We heard about their concerns. The prior licensee did not have these restrictions, but because of some of the concerns of the neighbors and the proximity to the ground floor outdoor space, we were asked to make to agree to certain restrictions, including moving a speaker, limiting the type of live music to acoustic, limiting the hours of all music, including acoustic, which would apply for the very small second floor terrace and the ground floor. And we also did, as Zona said, hire Acoustalog, which is probably the premier acoustic engineer in the city that does a lot of the hospitality work. And part of the stipulation is to continue to work with them to see if there are additional soundproofing measures that we can put in place for the ground floor space. So the reason I think why we're here is we spent a lot of time on this stipulation or this affidavit, which is your standard form. And what happened is that the corporate counsel for the applicants, which is Skadden Arps, was looking at this and asking a lot of questions because, unlike me, who sees this regularly, they don't. And they were asking me today a lot of questions about some of these provisions. that are in here. And on your end, it's not drafted by a lawyer. We try to keep the language sort of informal, somewhat casual, but reasonably tight. But it's not what Skadden Arps is used to seeing. So, I'm dealing with them on the language. There's no issue on the terms. The restrictions, the agreement on sound, on music, none of that is changing. So I want you to understand that delays are part of availability and part them looking at some of the general language. So when they see, you won't create a nuisance, they're asking me, what does that mean? What are the consequences? So I have to go through the process of explaining that to them in the context of a liquor license, which I did today, but we couldn't finish it today. But there have not been any challenges or second guessing on the business operational terms that we have worked out. So I feel confident that that is going to be okay. If for some reason there's some language that I have to tweak, Zona, I will speak to you, and I'm sure that, we'll work to try to resolve any issues, again, keeping intact the operational restrictions.
Great, thank you, Donald. Anything else from the committee before I go to the public? Okay. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment on this application? If so, please click the raise hand button now. Okay, can we promote Avi Itzikowitz? Okay, Avi, can you please turn on your video, unmute yourself, state who you are and your interest in this application, and then give your comment?
Sure, hold on. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. It's not giving me an opportunity to unmute. I'd love to unmute it. I just don't
That's
see
okay.
where it's letting me do that. Sorry. If I find it while I'm talking, I would be happy to do that.
All good. You're good.
Okay, thank you. So I'm the Director of Operations for 40 Central Park South, Atco Properties and Management, representing the building. I'd like to thank everybody for their hard work in working this out. We still have, I believe, a few now I think you can see. I think I want to thank everybody who worked on this. Our residents are very, very concerned about the music, and there have been some accommodations made for that concern. But we're as the owner of the building, we're still very concerned that the limiters won't be set properly. Who are we going to call? We don't believe those people will be responsive because they've never been responsive in the past. And so what's the enforcement mechanism that gets put into this so that it's assured that the Park Lane follows the rules of the road that have been laid out here and that have been agreed to. The other thing that I would just like to bring up is number I is explore potential additional sound attenuation measures with a New York City Department of Environmental Protection approved noise consultant. That should happen, in our view, before anything else happens. If there's additional sound attenuation that can be done that makes it better for our residents and less noisy for our residents, that should happen before this all goes into effect, and then we have a problem.
Great. Thank you for your comment, Avi. Lee Rose.
Hello. You can hear me, but I don't have the option to show myself. I'm not sure why. I'm a resident at 40 Central Park South. I'm still super concerned about several things. One of them is when they take the speakers off of our building, that they put them in a place. Can you still hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, good. That they put them in a place that doesn't shoot back at the building, which would be a pointless gesture. So I think I said to you in one of my emails, if they do it up the alley, then it's not going to bounce off buildings. So if they direct it at 40 Central Park South, that's going to be a bad thing. And my bigger question is operating till 4 a.m. makes it a club, not a hotel in a residential area. And that's a huge concern for all of us about the people that go there, that spill out onto the street. And I don't think, I'm pretty sure that even your 201 Park Avenue South doesn't operate till 4 a.m. So I'm really concerned about that.
Thank you, Lee.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else from the public who would like to comment? Okay,
I would like to comment. Can I comment?
next, right after this.
Sure.
Okay, so seeing none, I will put the big committee into business session. So during business session, no additional comment from the applicant or the public is appropriate unless requested by the chair. Since there were some outstanding questions and comments, Donald, is there anything you would like to say about them?
I will find out. The speakers may have been removed already. I don't know. I don't want to represent that, and I can find out where they were moved to. But certainly we don't want them pointing towards 40 to create a problem. So that we could probably take care of. With respect to 4 a.m., look, this hotel always had 4 a.m. That's not going to change. It is not a nightclub. It has never been a nightclub. It's not turning into a nightclub. It has event space. It has ballrooms. Events sometimes end at midnight, 11, 1 a.m. But they've got to have a 4 a.m. and they're not giving up a 4 a.m. It's always had that. So, but you know, this is a hotel. It's not turning into anything other than that. And the current owner has been in operation for a long time already. So you see how they're operating.
Great, thank you, Donald. Okay, so in that case, I will open it up to the committee. Any comments from the committee?
So I just want to clarify, I need clarifications. Are we talking about a new space in the building? Or are we talking about the rooftop space in the building?
Yeah, please.
So there are multiple spaces as part of the hotel. There's kind of this ground floor restaurant, the Rose Lane, that has attracted a lot of these noise complaints. There's like an indoor lobby bar, there's like banquet halls for events, and there's also like
Right.
rooftops. So all of these are considered under license.
Under one license?
Exactly, yes.
Thank you. And the other question was, are all of these spaces open to the public? Is there a reservation system?
So my understanding is that, like, particularly for some of the event spaces, like those really will only be in use during the events, like in terms of like the restaurant itself, like that is open in public, like anyone can go in and eat there.
Any other comments? David, did you have a comment? Oh, good. Okay. Okay, yes, yeah.
Well, because I'm new, and this goes to the question from the public, how is the affidavit enforced?
So basically, the affidavit is a stipulation of their liquor license. So if they violate the terms of the affidavit, the SOA will revoke their liquor license.
Okay, what is the process for that?
So usually it involves a lot of records of complaints of the violations so that the SLA can actually take action against the offending operation.
Just for new folks, I just want to comment if I can.
Yes.
One, it happens by hearing, and the hearing is public. And there's always a huge list of people whose licenses come up for revocation. So just in terms of SLA history and their activity, their ability to carry out what needs to be done is right there for you to see.
I just want to say also for the sake of new members and also for the sake of the public, you know, we are also not an enforcement body, right? Like this is a state agency. The state agency does what it does. We are an advisory body. And so that, yeah, I would say enforcement is not in our purview. That is very clearly the SLS purview.
That they will enforce it. Okay, Oh, sorry, Christopher.
I don't, I just, I feel like I'm new enough to just be asking, but, I feel like 311 is really important in this whole
Mhm.
process, and that the public should know that the best thing to do in all cases is always report everything to 311, because the city, not only logs it, but like keeps the data from that for like long term. So I feel like, the entry point for most public, like members of the public is a 311.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, jumping off that point, I think it is important to note that this hotel has been in business for many years. This isn't a completely new hotel. So they have operated their spaces, I believe, as described in as Zona just described. The only, I think, new space was the the Rose Lane, right? And that was the space that was causing issues, generating 311 complaints, if I remember correctly. So really, the goal here was to try to resolve that issue while allowing the hotel to function responsibly as it has. So with that, I think, let's see, we addressed the worry about enforcement. I do believe the affidavit has a contact number, is that?
Yes, so we have a stipulation, and I believe it'll be like the on-staff F&B manager whose contact information will be provided, and once we have that, we'll distribute it out to the residents, so they have someone at the hotel to be in touch with.
Great. The additional soundproofing, I guess, Donald, is the hotel retaining Acoustalog for that additional work?
I don't think they've reached out to him yet. They did remove the speakers. I just got confirmation that the speakers have been taken off the common wall. But yes, they will reach out to Alan Firestein. I'm not sure what, we're talking about outdoor space, so it's probably limited what can be done, but we will certainly inquire.
Great. Okay, and was there a stipulation in the affidavit around the speakers being removed?
Yes,
Okay.
so the language is just to remove all speakers from the common wall, but we're not like super prescriptive about orientation and
Okay. But they wouldn't go back on the common wall, right? Based on the way it's written.
Yeah, we just say remove
Okay.
all speakers from the common wall.
Okay. Yes, Donald, would you say that's true? That would not be.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
Excuse
I don't think it contemplates taking it off and then putting it back on. It's,
Okay, great.
it's staying off. If they put
Okay.
it back on, you can call me.
Okay, excellent. Okay, and the last concern was just about the 4 a.m. close, which, as we just mentioned, the complaints were really not around the indoor spaces that have the 4 a.m. close. They are banquet halls. They host weddings and corporate events. Yeah. Oh. Donald, did you want to add to that? Or?
No, I mean, they have all sorts of events and some go late, some don't.
Okay. But as far as we know, have there been any complaints around like anything beyond the patio space?
I think in terms of like the community meeting, the focus wasn't on like the indoor rooftop spaces, but I'm not like 100% sure like
Okay.
real complaints addressed this.
Okay, great. Yeah, so my sense from all our questions and comments is that there's a consensus that essentially the way we typically structure this is to have a deny unless, so it's a deny unless they follow the stipulations outlined in the affidavit, which Zona had just presented to us. Does anyone disagree with that at all? Okay, so
General question.
Yeah.
Sorry.
yeah, go for it.
Historically, this committee has taken a deny unless
Mhm.
view of the world, because that's what we think SLAP or the
SLA.
the SLA looks at.
Mhm.
Is there not a way for us to engage with them where it's approved with these conditions so that we're presenting a positive environment for
are the businesses that we're talking to, as opposed to a negative environment?
Sure. I mean, I think I wouldn't necessarily get caught up in the language. You know, I think the way we present our recommendations allows these restaurants and establishments to go out and, you know, do their business and thrive.
But I think just the general framework is like, the community wants to deny this, as opposed to we want to accept this with these provisions.
Janice, can I
So-
give you some historical perspective from the SLA? I can
Yeah,
Yeah, sure.
let you know why that happened, because I agree with it. It's a little nutty. So when community boards negotiated stipulations years and years ago, they would send in a resolution saying, we approve it, and then they'd list the stipulations. Well, the SLA would get that. They would say, oh, the community board approves it, and they would ignore the conditions. So the SLA asked the community boards to say, pass a resolution that says deny unless, because if it says deny, you'll get our attention. And then we'll read the rest of it and make sure that the conditions are part of the license. I agree. It's a funny way of doing it, but that request didn't originate with community boards. It originated from the state liquor authority.
Okay.
That's why community boards do that.
I'm fine with that. What I'm not fine with is using that same rationale for other parts of our community board meetings.
Okay, I would say that's out of scope for this discussion. But maybe something we can discuss.
No, but I mean, that's the whole conversation.
Yeah,
we're
I
having.
hear you. I hear you. Yeah, and I know it doesn't feel good to have to, you know, say deny unless, but as Donald said, historically, that's how things have been done. I actually didn't know that the SLA was the one that requested it, so thank you for that information. Yeah, and you know, I do believe that working to get towards an affidavit, that is how we foster that productive relationship between the business and the community. So
It also makes clients very nervous because they see it and they hear deny unless. I thought we were approved. Now it says deny. It's
Right.
should be a better way.
yeah. Okay, so let's take it to a vote then. Donna, do you want to make a motion?
Yeah, motion, oh, I think Todd.
Oh,
Can I
sorry.
just say something?
Yeah,
I just want to confirm what Donald said, and that the deny unless construction when negotiating these stipulations and conditions is customary. It's been customary for as long as I've been on the community board. I don't, certainly with regard to SLOP procedures and PSQL, before that, the attorneys such as Donald and a lot of the applicants have come to understand that the deny unless and the conditions is actually a positive thing in most cases. So it does sound worse than it is, but again, the norm and the custom is to use this. And I wouldn't be so much concerned about the counterintuitive sense of being at negative.
thanks, Todd. Okay, sorry, okay.
I will make a motion to deny this application unless they comply with the stipulations at that line.
Second. Great. Okay, give it to a vote.
Okay, Christopher,
Yes.
Dave Shapiro,
Yes.
Janice,
Yes.
Yes.
yes. Sashi,
Yes.
yes. Sept,
Yes.
Todd,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
and Zone.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm also entitled.
Sorry, we keep forgetting.
BJ.
Oh, I'm
Yes.
sorry. BJ, yes, okay. Libby,
I'm also a yes.
okay, motion passes.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Donald.
And see you next
I guess
time.
if there are any edits, if you can get it to us by Friday, and then if we can get this
Working
executed by Monday.
Quickly as I can. I will. I'll
Okay,
speak to
thank you
Zona
so
about it.
much, Donald.
Thank you very much. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Okay, so next up, we have an update on our dining out application review process. So to date, we have received a total of 15 dining out applications, 10 of which we reviewed in the past month, and 4 we have due in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So it was a very busy August. For context, applicants had until August 3rd to apply for the new program, though they can still apply. And DOT so far has been sending us applications 1 degree at a time at the start of each week. The application consists of contact information, operating hours, site plans with seating and measurements noted, and photos of the site. DOT determines that the application is complete and accurate before sending it to us and the respective council member. And the community board has 30 days to submit comment for roadway cafe applications and 40 days for sidewalk cafe applications. Despite this limited time frame, we've been trying to be as thorough as possible with our due diligence and feedback, noticing the public for comment and reaching out to the applicant to review their application with them and conduct a site visit as we do with our liquor license applications. However, instead of trying to squeeze in a community meeting and hammer out stipulations for an affidavit, for these applications, our goal is more to summarize any comments or concerns in the community and add in our own assessment of the proposed setup based on the considerations brought forth by the Open Restaurants Task Force, led by Todd Shapiro, in the past few years. Specifically, the task force created a matrix with 12 points of consideration that the board approved back in June of 2022, along with full open restaurants study, a report of comments, concerns, and recommendations for what ultimately became the current dining out program. Given that our feedback needs to be formatted in response to the feedback forms that DOT provides with the applications, Todd and I collaborated over the break to simplify and reformat the matrix to align with those DOT forms. And I can show you where we landed with that. So just give me 1 second. I put this up. Okay. Yeah, so as you can see here, this is the matrix that the Open Restaurants Task Force created a few years ago. We have 12 key issues or consideration points. And this was approved with the full package around the study that was done assessing the impact of open restaurants on the community. That said, this is essentially what the DOT form looks like. So there's 3 sections. They ask about physical footprint and dimensions, pedestrian flow, and existing curb use. That was for sidewalk. For roadway cafes, it's basically the same, and they just give you more room to elaborate on the recommendation and suggested modifications. But as you can see, there was a bit of a misalignment in terms of what the matrix had said and sort of what DOT landed on in terms of the issues that they were willing to consider and how we wanted to present that information. So over the break, Todd and I basically took those 12 consideration points and categorized them under those 3 different sections. So for example, under physical footprint and dimensions, there were considerations in our matrix around sidewalk accessibility, street accessibility, public safety impact, and equity and fairness of the use of the street. And we tried to simplify this and summarize it so that it just became this one question around the effect of the shared use of the sidewalk and street, with the response anchors, 1 being least desirable and 5 being most desirable there. So we did that for each of the 3 sections, so physical footprint and dimensions, pedestrian flow, which has a few additional questions, and existing curb use. And then we also added in a section around method of operation. So that has to do with the hours. DOT has its own hours for this program. For us, spaces that will be serving liquor in their outdoor spaces, we of course want them to continue to comply with our standard around our rear yard rooftop policy. There's stipulations about noise. DOT actually says no noise at all in these spaces. We ask about the service style to understand, what the potential for how many people will be using the space. And lastly, a question about sanitation and cleaning. And also around the appropriateness of the set up compared to the rest of the aesthetics of the neighborhood. So these new simplified questions were then put into a form, which exists in two versions. So there's one version, it's a Google form. Some of us on the committee have sort of served as our beta testers and gone out and tried to use this form. Very interested in your comments in a bit as to how this went. But this, again, taking those updated questions, laying them out here, giving space for additional comments so that we can have documentation around our assessments of the each of these signing out setups in our records. There's also a Word version if that's easier. Print that out, circle it, do what you like. And then essentially what we did was these response anchors became standardized responses to the actual form. So here's an example of one that was recently filled out. So we basically said, in this case, this application pretty much got 5s across the board. So everything was acceptable. And then the detail is actually the response anchors themselves. So this allows us to be consistent with our feedback across the different applications. Of course, if there is anything specific that we want to know, we can do that. Like in this case, the footprint was quite large. It was 600 square feet, but given the size of the establishment, it was determined that it was, proportionate to that. So, we just noted it, but of course we still find it acceptable. And then the way this form works, the DOT basically asks us to indicate if it's an approval, if it's a denial, if it's approval with modifications, and if it's an approval with modifications, if the applicant acknowledges and agrees to those modifications, or if they do not agree to the modifications. And that's basically it. And let's see.
So this one's approved with conditions.
Yes, and that one was just really because of the hours not aligning with DOT's guidelines. It's a bakery, so I think they just listed their opening hours, which is like 6 or 7 a.m. Whereas DOT, the hours pretty much start at 8 a.m. across the board and 10 a.m. on Sunday, I believe. So in terms of the applications that we have submitted comment on so far, they are 271 Fifth Avenue. That was a roadway and sidewalk application for Fortis NYC. 19 East 26th Street, sidewalk application for Black Barn. At 49 West 24th Street, that was a roadway application for Tapo. 1123 Broadway was a sidewalk application for Lupetto. 499 7th Avenue was a roadway application for Zeppola Italian Bakery. 246 West 28th Street was a roadway application for PS Kitchen. 370 Lexington Ave was a sidewalk application for Le Pain Quotidien. 315 Fifth Ave was a sidewalk application for Hokkaido Baked Cheese Tart, and 230 Park Ave was a roadway application for Vanderbilt Bar and Grill. And these were all approvals or approval with modifications. And really, it was just the hours, not conforming to either the DOT guidelines, or if they intend to serve alcohol in these spaces, just our CB5 rear yard rooftop policy. So I don't know, does anyone who worked on one of these applications wish to comment on their experience? Go for it.
I thought it was super easy. I used the Google form. My only request would be if after every voting area, there could be a comment section. Because I was leaving comments actually that were far removed from what I was trying to leave a comment on. So if you just can be like any comments under each, I think that would be maybe easier for you, but it's up to you.
Great.
Very minor point.
Thanks. Thank you for the feedback. Anyone else who worked on a application? Todd.
So, first of all, I second everything that Janice said. The process of our collaboration and the modification of what was approved by the board to work with the DOT's paperwork. I've used it so far on all of the due diligence assignments to date, which is like 4 or 5 of them. I think it works well. I think that as we all go out and do our due diligence assignments, we should have the form and nature of the questions it's asking in the back of our minds. Try to keep the big picture in mind as you do your due diligence assignments. You know, is it appropriate for the neighborhood? Is it appropriate with the hours of operation? There are some other things that you might consider as you work through your due diligence duties. You know, what is the background of the applicant? You can ask them, have there been any problems? Have you been cited? Those sort of things don't necessarily come up in the paperwork that we get. You might probe them a little bit about you know, their feelings about the neighborhood. And then, of course, look up and down the block, look to your left, look to your right, ask them if they're going to be applying for curbside or roadside and, you know, a liquor license, because remember, they don't necessarily, if it's a donut place that, you know, has an outdoor cafe or a curbside cafe, you know, there is something on the form where we need to know, or we should consider whether they're going to come back at a later date for a liquor license, you know, where there'll be a second level of review. So you can ask them that. And as Janice mentioned, it's not so much an issue that there's going to be an affidavit. There's quite honestly not enough time to do an affidavit. It's just, you know, keep the big picture in mind. These are, you know, the license period is longer than what you get for an SLA license, a liquor license. So even though we have less time, it's really important that we put down on paper what our concerns are for this, okay? Because it's 4 years, and during that period of time, if there are problems with it, you know, we need to have on record what our concerns were. And if they violate any of these things, or any of the issues that we make note of in this initial review come up, then the next time we'll be able to come back and, you know, have that handy when the next review comes up. But anyway, it's eminently doable. It does require that everybody act as efficiently as possible. As soon as you're assigned one of these due diligence assignments, go out and, you know, contact the people of record on the DOT paperwork. If you can, go take a look at the place. And, you know, we have our work cut out for us. I believe there were 2,000 new applicants. You'll see some documents that were circulated by Janice. There was a New York Times article, and there was some guidance from the DOT, or excuse me, there was some guidance from, I think it was a trade group, about the kind of issues that come up. One last thing is that when you go, this whole process, the review process by the community boards is new, right? This whole thing is new. I won't say we're making it up as we go along, right? But really, we're establishing a mode and method of review. When you establish your contact, take a little bit of time to explain the community board's role and what we're doing, because the applicants themselves may not understand what our role is. And, you know, we can confer on our progress at our meetings, and I think we can do it. Janice, anything else?
No, I think that was a great summary. And I will say that, you know, from what I've seen, our interactions with the community have been really positive. When we do notice the community, we've gotten like a few positive comments, which is a nice change for the liquor licenses. And the applicants themselves have been very cooperative and lovely to work with. So really, I think, you know, it seems like everyone, you know, not to speak too soon, everyone seems to be wanting to work together to make this work. So I think we as a community board can play that important role in making that happen. So does anyone have any other questions or comments about the dining out process? Okay, so let's see. Before I move on, though, I will note that as Todd mentioned, there was recently released guidance from the SLA around establishments seeking to serve alcohol in their licensed outdoor spaces. So basically, I believe they're requiring all establishments to apply for a municipal space alteration application, regardless of any prior licensing. So those will be coming our way, likely either later this year or next year. But from what we understand, the establishment needs to get their outdoor space approved by DOT before even submitting their alteration application to the SLA. So if things kind of continue to trickle in from DOT side, it's likely that fingers crossed that, you know, it'll come at a manageable pace as well when the time comes. And that's it. So last but not least, we have an update from the Cannabis Task Force, which I'll hand over to Task Force Chair Catherine Ellington.
Sure, thanks, Janice. So the Cannabis Task Force, I'm gonna start with the two locations that we have active applicants. So what we're finding is, I'm gonna just give a little bit of background first, just give me a moment. So cannabis applications have been submitted to our office from November 2023, and then another round in January, and we got over close to 100 applications. And so what is an application? An application in our view is about an applicant and a location. As SLAP, SLA history, we're still pretty much commenting around time, place, and manner on these applications. And the OCM process is the oversight agency by which we receive guidance. We have, you know, by now people know we have our guidelines. To date, those applications that we received in November and January are now coming back around to try to open. Some are trying to find locations. We encourage people to know what a New York State licensed cannabis dispensary looks like by not only the decal in the window, but you can go to the website. You can download, there are about 8 locations in CB5. So if there are 8 cannabis retail dispensaries in CB5, you should know that everything else that you see is something else to see. So we have 2 locations that are seemingly coming close to opening that we're reviewing. One is in a mixed residential building. Yoden and I and Janice in part have been working. This is located at 241 Fifth Avenue, known as Bud and Honey. We met with the applicants about a week ago. We'll have a community meeting in another week. And Yoden, if you want to chime in and add any comments, that'd be great.
I think you covered it. I'm learning
Yeah.
as I go
She's-
from you.
Right, and talk about the process. How's it been so far? It's fine.
Yeah.
This is a new process. This is not SLA is 101 years old. Cannabis is 2-3 years old. So it's a new process. So please feel free to add comments if you have. Okay. Mhm. Questions?
What is slowing down the applications?
So there are a myriad of, so cannabis applicants applied, they've come before OCM. OCM selects the applicants. They then go looking for locations to open. There have been a whole host of challenges from finding appropriate locations to really finding appropriate locations, right?
Right.
Right, so basically, a lot of the applicants are submitting applications with multiple locations. There's community resistance, there's public outcry, there's challenges to what locations look like. Take a look at the ones, you know, what I say to people, if You know, if you're on Slack, you should at least know the ones that are open, that are legal and what they look and feel like, so that you can have some sense of what we are talking about and what we're not talking about. Go ahead.
If I may, I think maybe also part of what you're driving at is it us or is it the state?
It's a mix. You know, this is brand new public legislation that got enacted. And now it's on the ground trying to have legs and live. So these are words and regulations that are trying to come into practice. There are no norms and standards. There are, you know, there's, like I said, there's public outcry. What we're trying to do here is adhere to the guidelines that OCM has, and within those guidelines, think about who we are, localized, and try to help applicants and community communicate clearly with one another their concerns and stay on the page, right? Stay on the page. And so, you know, what I will say, so the other application we have that's coming forward is at 1535 Broadway. They're working now, you know, there have been layers of support. So these are applicants that have guidance from the OCM. Now they're starting to have some support from the Small Business Administration, the business services here in the city to help them open. DASNY, the Dormitory Authority, early on is a partner. There's a huge investment to put up to sort of be a viable applicant, and then you're investing money, but you haven't yet opened the business. And so some of the applicants are really feeling pressure, and they've been at this for a while, and they moved through the pandemic to try to be viable. Go ahead.
So how do we remove the bottleneck on our side? I understand that we can't really do too much on the state side, but how do we remove the bottleneck on the community court side?
So what we've done is we have our task force. We maintain a very open position with applicants. We help to connect them with neighbors, bids. We help them understand our landscape, and we try to understand their landscape so we can have more common language about what the reality of these locations look like. What I will say is there seems to be a slight trend in applications that have locations that are solely retail. So these locations are less of a challenge to residential life, but they are so there are all kinds of things. For example, there's a proximity protection rule that says an applicant gets to open and another applicant won't open within 1,000 feet of another applicant.
That's legal.
Yeah, that's right, because, yes, that's right. And so there have been some that have challenged just what you said, that's legal. So, and then in other ways, you know, in one block, what we have residents saying is, how many cannabis locations should we have within 2 blocks? We have families, we have children, and these are very luring and enticing places. So trying to dispel the myths, educate and be advocates, both for most importantly for public life, residential life, and for the viability of these businesses that have, you know, the right to open.
How many applicants do we have that are trying to get like approvals right now
From where? Approval.
in CB5?
So we have 8 applications that are open. We have about, right now we have 2 applicants that have come forward that are live, maybe a couple of others. It takes them a while to sort of
Maneuver through our process or the state
their own process. We're not
With
holding,
OCM.
we're not holding them up. You asked about a bottleneck. We're not their bottleneck. Again, we're not an agency. We work with you know, we're working at a very localized level, but we have the ability to give input on time, place, and manner to OCM and to work with these applicants.
Yeah, so 241 Fifth Avenue, for example, is actually already approved by OCM. But we are here to help facilitate a positive relationship between the operator and the community. We still have concerns about it.
So I have a question. And I didn't realize that there were, at what point do we get involved? as,
Mhm.
as.
So the way the process should work is the applicant should send a notification to the office, CB5 office. And notifying us that they plan to open at a particular location, and
So
that
the
they,
applicant has to proactively reach out.
they
to
are
us.
required to do that, right?
Okay, and they've already gotten their approval before they come to us. They've already been approved by.
They're in some
OCM.
part of the approval process. There are many part, right? They're in
Yes.
different places. Mhm. Todd, yeah,
On the
okay. So, yeah, so
So with 241 Bud and Honey, there were comments from November.
right,
And then they came, but now they're coming to us for,
right, because they have,
because we had posted a public notice in November and then I posted again. So why did that happen?
why would, because there are various parts to the approval process. So they get to one point in the process where they can actually send a notice to OCM, but there is still more work to do for them to open. And in this particular case, this is a great case to look at because it is in a residential building, mixed-use building. And so, residents have already made quite a few comments, and we're having a community meeting to try to hear what we can do.
So we've already gone through this process 8 times for these 8 existing.
Right, so the
operation
ones that
office
have been, like I said, what we've noticed in the trend is the ones that are in completely commercial buildings have opened without CB5 comment or
Oh,
review.
I thought it was incumbent upon them to
It
apply
is.
to us.
But just like with SLA, some applicants, because they don't pose a public, sort of the residential public balance, they don't always make it. And some of it is just murky. It's new, it's murky. I don't know, I can't exactly say, what I can say is get to know the application, the locations that are open, that are legal around the city, and every community board is having the same push and pull. We're not different. I went to go have brunch in CB1 and I came up off the subway and the posting for their cannabis applicant, I was like, I'm like, is somebody, so there if you look around the city, you'll see cannabis applicant public notifications all over the city. If you can attend these meetings, they're the same. Everybody's, sort of scrambling and trying to work together to do what we need to do. So the other parts that I wanted to talk about were one, we also did respond. So wrapped around all of this, once you get to know the locations that are legal, there's been an effort here in the city, concerted call Operation Padlock and Protect, to close illegal locations. And we had the opportunity to comment, and this is done by emergency legislation that they're trying to now have as a regulatory policy. And so we got a chance to we got a chance to respond to proposed comments with the sheriff's office because OCM is overseeing legalized operations. The sheriff's department, which is overseen by the Department of Finance, is working hard to close illegal operations. And so we submitted a letter in response, and it's really around some of the key points that we have found in our work over the last 2 years. So Janice and I were able to work, we had 2 public hearings, a meeting with the task force to try to come up with a response. So we just took aim at what we understand to be important. I just want to highlight a few of the parts of the letter, which include, we still want to see a change to the terminology public youth facility. In the city of New York, schools operate inside all kinds of buildings, and a lot of the language in OCM is county and beyond New York City, relevant. And so we want to see school and places of worship as, defined in a way that is more inclusive, and can protect these places in both schools and houses of worship. And then we wanted to, so what happens with Operation Padlock and Protect is enforcement moves in, they padlock a location, but the location has a right to a hearing. And what we're asking is that that hearing have a public part to its process. So in some cases, the applicant, the location may agree to no longer sell what was in the location. These are all very highly unique situations. They go before, a hearing process. The other parts we talked about was really prioritizing enforcement where illegal locations are in residential areas in the city, in our district, and mixed use properties where there are harm reduction facilities. In our research, we found a lot of harm reduction facilities in CB5, and we want those places protected because these are vulnerable populations, as well as the schools and youth facilities and places of worship. We're asking not for straight line measurement in terms of distances, but walking distance. And we just want to know about violations in a timely manner. Some of this trying to find the data, trying to find out what's going on is a little more difficult, so we want a more public process. Again, the Operation Padlock and Protect is part of enforcement that is going to be enforced by the Sheriff's Department, which is a little bit different than NYPD. So these violations are civil violations. They're not criminal. The whole idea was to decriminalize cannabis. So this is a way to make efforts to impose civil penalties to illegal operations, landlords, and those involved in this kind of activity, be it in a location, in a building, or on a street. Any questions? The last part is the Cannabis Task Force has been the grounding space. This is a combination of CB5 members, leadership, as well as public members, bids. And over the last 2 years, I've been really fortunate to work with this crowd of people to try to put forth the localized efforts that reflect sort of our intention around cannabis and the regulations, and the work has been phenomenal. We do need help. We do need a few more hands. And so I'm asking people to look on the calendar, see when we're meeting. If you can't commit, think about at least attending a meeting or some part of a meeting. And anytime you have any input, know that you can have your say. Again, I reiterate, this is still very new work. If I talk to CB4, sometimes I get, or CB6, they're having the same possibilities and opportunities that we're all challenged to sort of look at.
But I still don't quite understand, like, what's the issue? Like, there's been lots of states that have legalized cannabis, and we have a I guess, an existing footprint with the liquor licensing, right? So like, I just don't understand, like, this has been legal for how many years in New York State? 4 years?
No, well, almost 4.
4 years, and it's been a failed execution, right? It's absolutely failed, like, and I don't quite understand what the issues are, why we can't get this through in a organized way to get these things done, so we don't have illegal operators. So we have the appropriate licensed facilities bringing tax dollars in for the state.
I think any new business model struggles. I think other places and states and countries have all had just what I've echoed here. You open, you start, there's push, there are all kinds of forces that make it, that really do make it challenging to just go forth in a very linear fashion. I find that, in particular, in the city of New York, it would seem like you could just open 50 cannabis shops and nobody would know the difference. But the way in which
Why not?
it would seem like, but it's not the reality.
Why?
Sounds like you want to join the cannabis task force.
No, but I just don't understand, like we have so few stores that are legal and open. We have a ton of illegal places.
Yeah.
And there are other states who, I mean, when you look at the pricing of cannabis here versus other places, it's significantly higher because there's no competition, right? And so this is a legal thing. The voters wanted this overwhelmingly. And so I don't understand the
So for-
issues on, at least on our side of the.
So for example,
right?
the big example, so when people talk about safety, cannabis businesses have challenges opening bank accounts.
Totally understand that, and I totally
Right.
understand the real estate perspective of that,
So that puts a lot of places with a lot of cash.
right?
So they're not necessarily always talking about the product that's being sold. They're talking about how the business is being conducted. When they
That's the
talk
thing.
about, so people talk about security, when they're talking about security, let me just say this. When I walk by the 8 locations that are open in our district and other legal operations, yeah, it's still a work to teach around. It's still a work. I don't see some of the things that people imagine, but that's the work that we do to try to dispel the myths and open the reality. You have, locations that are trying everything they can do to be who they need to be, and other operators who are not, but.
Yeah, David, I love how engaged you are on this, and I really encourage you to attend.
And so
cannabis
we
task
can
force.
talk more about this, because I realize that I'm right.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. We also want the legal operators to flourish in our district. And, if you attend the meetings, you'll hear from both the businesses and the community that illegal operations are an issue. So, any thoughts that you have around that, I think would be really valuable in forming opinions that we can then work with OCM to try to get things, to the extent that we can, try to get them in order and get these businesses through. So.
Yeah.
I have a question about this holding landlords
before-
accountable.
Wait, before you do that, I know Todd had his hand raised, so I
Oh,
just
sure.
acknowledge him.
So what I would do, first of all, let's be honest, and these are issues that we've discussed at our cannabis task force meetings. The state seriously underestimated the difficulty of screening the applicants, and they made decisions about giving priority to those that were disadvantaged or ended up in jail, in the period leading up to the new program when it was illegal. They also were totally unprepared with enforcement rules and the ability to crack down on the illegal shops. It's created a situation where the legal process of setting up the new applicants, screening them, and protecting them from a flood of illegal operators, as Janice mentioned, that's what's happened. Now, what I would recommend, David, or anybody else on the committee that wants to see the big picture of the failure, and it is a failure. The head of the Cannabis Control Board has been replaced. Our governor is on record as citing that the whole program has to be rethought in its execution and particulars. New York Magazine and the New York Times and Crane's Business World have had major write-ups. Catherine and I have a library of articles that we floated around among ourselves, which we'd be happy to share with anybody on the committee that wants to educate themselves about these issues. And again, what I would recommend is Catherine is absolutely right. And for those of you who are interested in being on the cutting edge of public policy on cannabis, I think you'll find it very interesting and rewarding to learn about this and be in a position to advise our state government and city government. And remember, you know, the way this plays out, it's the leading role is the state government, with a secondary role being played by the city government and the community boards on an advisory basis. We have in our meetings had a chance to push back on a lot of these issues. So Catherine and I and Janice, we've spoken to people, our fellow community boards, and we've commented in the fiercest terms on the lack of enforcement and the things that have to be done. So really, you know, please come. Those of you on the SLAP committee, get involved, educate yourselves. I'm sure Catherine and I, once you've read the articles, would be happy to sit down with you and, you know, explain it further if needs be. But, you know, our community board has a big role to play in this.
Thank you, Todd. Yoden, what was your question?
No, it's okay. I'll
So
probably
our
the
next-
task force.
With that with that in mind, the next task force meeting is scheduled for Monday, September 16th at 7 o'clock. You can attend. It's online. And you can attend, and we are gonna do some education, have a special guest at an October, hopefully at the October SLAT meeting, just to give from SBS to give a little more education, because we can't do enough. I think it's very challenging. If you walk around, there are places that look legal that are not legal. There are a lot of places, I don't even know what they sell inside, so how would I know that it's illegal? But in any case, we'll do some of those kinds of questions at the October educational presentation. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Catherine. Okay, so are there any last comments or questions from anyone about anything? Okay. Seeing none, that concludes our agenda, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Should I turn it off?
Please.